Okay, well, so I'm gonna start with a few halachas, but the main thing is we have to ask questions, we have questions. So we're just gonna go through a few things which Shlomo Zalman says about Shlomo Zalman about various different aspects of the Chodesh of Pesach. It says that today, when everybody cleans before Pesach, Reb Chaim Kanievsky's house, they did not turn over the house until literally B'dikas Chametz night. So B'dikas Chametz night, obviously they have to do real B'dika. It's fundamental B'dika from in every nook and cranny. But we normally go clean out our houses already for several weeks in advance. So Shlomo Zalman says that to us that the b'dika is if we cleaned well, right? So we're not checking to find chametz, we're checking to see if we cleaned well. So obviously that means you don't have to make a fundamental b'dika from top to bottom, as you would have to do in Reb Chaim Kanievsky's house, but you make a b'dika from for whatever that, make sure that they cleaned here, they cleaned there, they got to this area, they got to that area. And so they say that Reb Chaim Kanievsky was once told that in Chutz La'aretz, people have houses with 3 or 4 floors, and he said, "Wow, how do you do b'dikas chametz?" So in fact, if we did Reb Chaim's b'dikas chametz, it would take us much more time. The same thing is you don't have to, if you cleaned your clothing from before Pesach, you don't have to check it again on their Pesach, make sure there's no chametz in the pockets. Obviously, if you if there's something which you have, a jacket which you haven't worn in a long time, which you didn't clean, you check the pockets and make sure you don't have anything in there. Shlomo Zalman held their flashlight is okay, but it's better to use a candle because that is the minhag Yisrael. He also held that the light can be on when you're checking chametz, and he was once in a room where the light bulb went off. It was off and it was burnt out. He dafka put in a new light bulb before b'dikas chametz, because it's not that doesn't make it worse to have a light on. On the contrary, it makes it better. Obviously, nowadays we very often clean b'dikas chametz even for the house completely clean. That's not a problem. He says it's better to do b'dikas chametz right after Marav and not wait until it's fully clean, because we'll check those places later on. Shlomo Zalman was asked about asking about when if you can answer the phone in the middle of b'dikas chametz, and he said you can answer the phone and say, "I'm in the middle of checking." You don't have to go. You say "I'm in the middle of checking" because that is from the b'dika. And he says, however, you have to have first started. You can't do it between bracha and the b'dika because then it'd be a hefsek, and the bracha will not take effect on anything. He says mitzad hadin, you don't have to actually check Sfarim because any crumbs you have in Sfarim are tiny and they're butter. They're not going to entice you to eat them. So so therefore, even though there are many people who are makpid, who check, nevertheless, he says even if you find a cookie in your Gemara, you're not going to eat it because it's repugnant to you. So therefore, you don't have to clearly check Sfarim. I think that the Chazon Ish checked every sefer. I think it's like this. Chazon Ish checked every sefer that he used during the year, and he wants. I think it's the Shabina Rav came to visit him, and the Shabina Rav on Pesach, Chazon Ish said, "Look, I'm using your sefer. See, it's on my table." And Shabina Rav said, "No, I know you don't use on Pesach for him to use the rest of the year. So it means only looking at my sefer during Pesach. There's no looking at the rest of the year. So I'm not impressed." Okay, obviously, a person should check a stender or anything else that has a shul, which Tal's bag, if he has any chashash that he's going to be having chametz there. Some people who go away for Pesach have a question whether they can make a bracha on checking their cars. Right? Let's say away from Pesach, b'dikas chametz night, but you have your car with you. And you do make b'dikas on cars. The answer is, of course, you cannot make a b'dika on a car, a bracha on a b'dika on a car, because it's just like a big box. It's not a way shows up. It's like a big suitcase. So therefore, there's no bracha on that. If you're in a hotel the night of Bdikas Chametz, then you should check, of course, your hotel room. And he speaks about the famous question of the mini bars, and he says, of course, you have to take the things out before Pesach. The minute of putting out a piece of bread, they did do in Rosh Shlomo Zalman's house, but he says, of course, they have to be very careful that, obviously making sure that it does become a michshol later on, and you're allowed to make a bracha even if you didn't put out those pieces of chametz. The person who had if you sold the rooms that you sell in your house, let's say the closet where you have your chametz. So some people you do have to b'dika there, but because it's still yours at that time when you do b'dikas chametz, because it's not sold the next day. But Rosh Hashanah says you don't have to, because since you know that the next day you're going to sell it, so therefore it doesn't require b'dika. It's like a place which there's chametz which you're not going to use on Pesach, so therefore it's not a problem. Okay. In terms of burning the chametz, it's interesting. There is there's actually the sheer kind of the mitzvah of the beer chametz is the kazayas, but people evidently are not makbid on this to have a kazayas, and I don't think you do have to be makbid on it. Just because obviously there's no bracha to be made, so therefore it would not be necessary to have the kazayas. In terms of selling chametz, yeah.
So in regards to Shlomo Zalman's shita, that if we did a thorough clean before Pesach, the b'dika milk Pesach is just a check if we clean well, not to find chametz. But Masha, like one example, let's say you have these toy chests with tons of toys in it. So if we dump it out before Pesach, go through everything, there's no requirement then to dump it again during the b'dika, check the chest again and.
No, unless you're afraid that maybe your child.
Yeah, but if that's not an issue, then.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't understand the fact of putting the b'dika in place also where you already know that there's chametz, let's say a closet. You know that there's chametz, so what's the point?
Because if you have those only have to check those, it doesn't matter, it's a technical. The halacha mitzvah, the chiyuv is to check your house, not to check the place of the chametz. But some doesn't know that.
You already know that there's chametz.
Doesn't matter, so you check it for other chametz which you might, in that place, which you might not know about, which you want to make sure that it's in the sale, or whatever the case may be. But this is a very remote question, you're right. Shlomo Zalman, this will be a very big problem for many people in the shul, so obviously we don't pass in this way, but Shlomo Zalman says that chametz gomer you really shouldn't sell, which would include many expensive beverages. So so that's because it's really, you're supposed to, the sale accomplishes two things. The sale accomplishes that you should be over by a motzei, you shouldn't own chametz your best, and also that you shouldn't have chametz shavuot of a Pesach. Like wherever chametz you own by mistake, you shouldn't have that chametz shavuot of a Pesach. After Pesach, so Shlomo Zalman said to avoid the possibility of a chametz shavuot of Pesach, and that you rely on the sale, but on chametz gomer which you have, it would be best to get rid of it. So again, the minhag ha'olam is not like that. We sell chametz gomer to a non-Jew as well.
There's a difference between schnapps and regular chametz gomer.
What?
Difference besides the money part, there's a difference between schnapps and regular chametz. Some people don't sell.
Some people say it's taroimus, because it's a mixture of chametz. That's what they sell. People say. So you're asking?
Mixture of what?
Water and chametz.
Makes it less chametz, or?
Yeah, makes it less chametz, because it could be the water is mevatel the. I don't know how exactly it works, but the water is mevatel the alcohol barov. So and it's before Pesach, we know there is bittul barov by chametz. So that would be the limud schus to sell the.
But in essence, if you're selling a loaf of bread, you're selling a loaf of bread, right? There's no real
Right.
issue with it.
Right. If you sell low bread, you might as well sell scotch also.
What's the guideline? Someone like for Hefsed Meruba, right? What's considered a Hefsed Meruba for people?
And I've seen for this purpose, is there anything which for you is considered being expense? So there's not regular Hefsed Meruba for every Meruba is different for every person, different in every situation. Like something which is covered Shabbos comes Hefsed Meruba even if it's $10, right? But for this situation, I would say that something which is if you have a substantial amount of liquor, a couple $100, that's considered to be Hefsed Meruba. Okay, so it's hard to, there's no specific, what unified, defined hefsek meruba for all cases.
Well, if I'm selling liquor, let's say, right? And let's say there's a couple bottles that are not that expensive. Once you're selling, you can sell
Once you said, yeah.
the liquor.
Yeah.
Well, my question was like, there is no issue selling a box of pasta. in the market.
Again, Shlomo Zalman wouldn't, but the minimum today is to do it.
Okay,
Even without hefsek meruba.
What?
Without hefsek meruba.
Even without hefsek meruba, yeah. But you're asking, I know, it was gonna be machmir. Right?
If you're midway, you're only selling hefsek meruba.
I'll take whatever's not, that's the rule.
Okay, so obviously, you have to put the chametz, which belongs to the non-Jew, has to be in a separate place. Where sometimes it doesn't have to be behind walls between the chitzos asar, but I tend to talk in high walls. But there has to, you should likely either put the key to that place somewhere else, or at least put tape around it so people know that this is a place where the chametz belongs to the non-Jew.
That's supposed to be done before the decal, or it doesn't matter?
No, it doesn't matter.
That's before it's non beer.
No, doesn't enjoy my beer either, but that's we want to make sure that the sale is really considered to be a sale, and part and parcel of that is that this is the goy's, it's not ours.
What about if someone doesn't clean their house and sell their whole house?
It's fine. Still do the because if you're there night before Pesach, it's not sold yet,
Oh,
right?
okay, but
But you're not, no, I shouldn't say it, sorry, get it back. You're supposed to leave a room which you don't sell to do bidikah. Okay, so that, because it's, you should not sell your whole, and the whole country house, because the top, it's a shiloh, making bracha because chametz, you should leave one room over that's not sold. Okay? Usually the way the star is written, you're not selling your house, right? You're selling all the chametz in the house. So anyway, you have a chiyuv b'dika. It's very rare that it's actually, it's not really done to, when you look at Shtar Mechira, it's not really done to sell the house. It's selling, they're selling the chametz in the house. And so, you know, like the mokum where the chametz is, because that's to make it a kinyan agav karka.
if you have a business that has chametz,
That's Midrash chametz is really made for businesses. Because that's where the real hefsek came about, right? So yes, yeah, well, that the minute is, that's just the minute came about for that, and then private individuals adopted it too.
you have to know where your chametz is.
No, it's better, but it makes it more of a sale, but you don't have to. In other words, if you forgot to put it into the star, you know, you put in the star, it's in the fridge, it's in the pantry, and you forgot this, oh, I have another fridge in the garage, it's still included in the sale.
Say all your chametz basically.
Yeah.
Especially if Amazon sellers, they have these FBA warehouses. Your warehouse in Amazon, and it could be all over the country.
That's true, but they now have to, if they sell, they have to make sure that chametz is not sold during Pesach, and they make sure it's not sold.
You take down a listing, you
Keep that
deactivate it.
listed.
You can make the price very high. The problem is some guy might buy it at a high price.
Right.
You have to literally deactivate it. It could be all over America.
Right, yeah, you're back to the activated.
So once it happened to me that I forgot, let's say, comments inside my lunch bag, I have a separate lunch bag for Pesach. And in my regular all year round lunch box, I forgot sometimes and I found it afterwards, I threw it out. But you're saying technically you don't.
You
need
didn't have to throw it
Oh,
out,
Cool.
right? Sorry about that.
It sounds like still.
What about if someone owns like stock or partnerships in company with a guy?
That's all included in the sale. By the way,
The
you
chametz
don't
is a-
stock, you don't stock in a company, you don't really own chametz.
Even if the
No, because if you go, I own stock in Starbucks. If I go into Starbucks and I say, I own stock, I'm taking a coffee, they're gonna call the police, right? You don't own anything in the store, it's a misunderstanding.
so not public stock, let's say it's a private company that you have a partnership with a guy in.
Then then you have to do a sale, yeah.
But that's in your portion, you can sell your portion of the chametz, but let's say the business is buying chametz throughout Pesach also.
Yeah, big problem. You should sell the whole business, you should sell the whole business for all Pesach, just like.
So you sell your chelik in the business, I guess.
Yeah.
And if you have to pay that it's worth more or less, you have to tell the guy that the business is now worth
You
more.
have to tell them I'm selling you for this, for the business for the whole week, and you take a 1 week worth of profit, whatever, from this year, additional to whatever you get.
You
That's
can't
what
make
you'll sell.
profit with sales and stuff.
Right.
You can't make profit.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You have to be divorced from it for that week, yeah. It's like the Shtar Mechira B'Shabbos, the same idea, Shtar Mechira B'Shabbos is based on the same principle. Okay, so It says interesting, if since you sold the chametz, if there's a danger of a fire in your house, you're allowed to sell the guy's chametz. Say the guy's chametz. It's not your chametz, you sell the guy's chametz, which is very nice of me.
Not. It's not muktzah though?
No, I mean, it could be muktzah, but not necessarily, no. It's his stuff. Okay, moving along. We have chametz, which is, people have, he says kids, they often make art projects out of dry pasta, which they put onto carton or poster for to make it fancy or nice. And are you allowed to keep it over Pesach? So he says not necessarily. Says because it seems like this could still be suitable to eat. But he says if the kids painted it, so then it would be okay. And I think there is actually some glue which is made from chametz as well. So again, if you have glue, that type of glue, and if it's only on a kid's project or something like that, so to make sure that it's possible la'achila. One thing I learned new this year is that, well, I should say this first, that you don't have to have soap which is kosher with Pesach, because it's or shampoo, because it's definitely possible from achilas chametz, from achilas kelev, but nevertheless, Zalman himself did use kosher Pesach soap. So so I guess
Even
it's
dish soap? Even dish soap? Even dish soap?
It doesn't say, just says sabon, so I don't know. But
You get schap being machna like that, or?
it's a question, I
I
guess.
don't understand. Zalman did it, so, but like.
What?
I assume that because
Like being machna.
I guess, I think Shlomo Zalman uses machnas because otherwise thousands of people would come and hock him with China, right? Why aren't you using kosher Pesach soap? So just use the kosher Pesach soap so people don't come and lose you about it. That's probably why he did it. Well, an interesting thing which he says, which I did not realize, which he says that, of course, all medicines which are not suitable achila, which are 99% of adult medicine, you can take on Pesach without a question. And even though they have lists and lists and lists of medicines which are mutter, medicines which are kidneys, medicines which are chametz, if it's real medicine and it doesn't taste good, it doesn't matter. You're allowed to take it. He says even vitamins. I always said vitamins are different because they're not mamish medicine, but he says no, it doesn't make any difference because since whatever they do is posted in lachilas kelem, it's no longer food, right? It's just a chemical. So the fact that it was once upon a time food doesn't make a difference. It's interesting because it could be this relevant to big machlekes between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. In Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, the Mahadrin Hechsherim give hechsher to diet soda on Pesach, whereas in Eretz Yisrael, the Mahadrin Hechsherim do not give hechsher to diet soda on Pesach because evidently aspartame is somehow grown from corn. It's not corn itself. It's like a spore which they grow on the corn. So I guess it's a similar question, right? Something which is, it's not part of the corn. It's not a food, but it has connection to the corn. Does that make it already something which you should be machmir not to have or not? So in Eretz Yisrael, they're machmir and aspartame, which is very good. It's very depressing. You know, it's so basic. Can't find any diet soda.
What about like a vitamin like a Tums then, which is purposely flavored to?
Yeah, so some which is flavored. Tums I think is kidneys. And so Tums you should not have unless you have a very, very bad heartache, not just stomach. What do you call it? Heartburn, not just stomach heartburn. Yeah, so yeah, if it has, because it does have this kidneys, it does have a flavor. Yeah.
Okay, so in regard to vitamins, not medication but vitamins, is there enough between kids and adults regarding vitamins, they can take kidneys or not?
No, I just said there's no difference.
No
No,
difference.
but even if it's tasteless.
Tasteless, yes.
If it has a taste, so then, if a kid, maybe we can make over an adult, you certainly should have.
So that's not good enough to me. Vitamin that is a taste, if it's only kidneys, then a kid could be mutter, don't know.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm saying general pills, anything that's in a pill form that doesn't have a flavor, you don't even need to ask a question about,
No, you meant that.
all good to go?
Yeah, good to go. Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay, especially if you want it before Pesach. Because if you, there's an additional epic, because then the chametz is butter. If you got the prescription to deliver it on Pesach,
No, but it's not
Exactly.
strict, it's just, let's say. people
yeah,
take-
but I'm saying,
people take
that-
probiotics, they
if you
take
want
that,
another,
you
if you
know.
wanna be sure, just buy it before Pesach.
There's no supply, everybody must,
What?
oh, it's butter.
Butter, yeah. If anything, any Pesach chametz before just butter before Pesach is butter. On Pesach, chametz not butter, even better. Before Pesach is butter.
So there's a chametz ingredient, chametz doesn't matter.
What?
Even if it's chametz, even if it's flour in there, doesn't matter.
There's no real flour in there, it's not,
Yeah.
it's
No,
definitely
it
not.
is.
Yeah, but it's a minuscule amount, right? It's not gonna be a very big problem. Okay, so he says that what you, it's interesting, chumrah, which is that for Bnei Ashkenaz who don't eat matzah shira, egg matzah and Pesach, he says it should be not use kalim, which have egg matzah either, which is, sounds like a very big chumrah, but that's what Shlomo Zalman says. If and Shlomo Zalman also said a chumrah, if food fell on the floor, they were machmir not to eat it. If kalim fell on the floor, they rinse them out, they rinse them well, and then they use them. So I'm not machmir on this, but you know, there are many people are machmir that they don't eat any fruit or vegetable which can't be peeled on Pesach, and they make sure to peel it. So there are many levels of chumrah, and you know, can't make fun of anybody's chumrah, and certainly from Shlomo Zalman, machmir not to eat if starting on the floor. Okay, there's a legitimate chumrah.
It could be a marsha of chametz on the floor,
What?
could be a marsha of chametz on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to imagine that, but and even then, if you wash it off, you wash it off. That's
Anyway,
okay.
You're mopping the floor with the chemical also, so you're.
Right.
taking away-
But again, okay, it's a legit Pesach, one of the many chumras which people are machmir, tavol and bracha.
Right.
Okay, so well now about countertops. So he says that countertops which are made out of porcelain are considered like cheres, and it's that you can't do kasher then. But marble you can kasher with a hot stone. If you pour hot water, even the cliche, because normally you don't have pre-rishon going there. And the Evan, it's enough even to just pour from pre-rishon without the hot rock. Okay, the hot rock would obviously would be something which you use in order to maintain the heat. But if you pour from the pre-rishon frequently, right, and it's not just that you let the water spread on the counter, but you pour frequently, so then that's good enough. I think granite is kal v'chomer from marble, and granite is less than marble.
What about Formica?
Formica is like the same thing like
Porcelain.
porcelain, yeah. He was asked, those people who cover marble anyway with foil or with a covering of some sort, do they still have to pour hot water in it because it's covered anyway? And he said, yep, that's the minhag Yisrael.
Really?
Yep. Minhag Yisrael is to kasher it even though you're putting on top of it a covering. Again, Pesach is Pesach. Okay, there's a long
They
discussion.
have these half-inch. thick
Yeah, so those
plastic
are,
stuff.
so yeah, that's not talking about we had that, so that's really a second counter. That's what I said about, you put aluminum foil.
Oh,
It's in the
okay.
falling off.
No, so if you get a thick cover that's like,
Yeah,
then you wouldn't have to cut through
No.
it. Okay.
We're all good.
okay,
You want it.
Like, yeah, good. one,
yeah, a lot of times it's covered with foil or with something else, a cloth, a rips, so therefore, it's good, you have to really, it's best to be, do cut caution underneath. He doesn't speak about this, but as you may know that Spartan do follow a value say can't do kosher dishwashers for Pesach. Our minhag is not the kosher dishwashers for Pesach.
All year round also.
What?
I'm told all year.
All year round from milchik to fleshik as well, and as much as it's worth converting to a Spartan just for that. What?
Only on metal dishwashers or plastic ones as well? A lot of them have plastic tubs on the inside.
That makes it worse,
That,
but still for Spartan to be okay.
Doesn't matter, the soap,
Yeah.
all that the soap takes out
Right.
the taste and you're
They're
done.
relying on the soap being less than time of ground, which makes a lot of sense, frankly. And so,
We all rely on it every time we get a coffee, not in the store anyways.
well,
The water doesn't get hot enough in there anyways. to burn
This is
out
one
the
of
metal.
my
Even if it's not hot,
okay.
it's really the soap that kills out all the taste.
Something that I knew learned last year for the first time is one of my Heinemann, is that who's the master of many practical issues, is that there are two types of microwaves. And you have to run a test on your microwave before you know if you can kosher it or not. And he said he put a potato sliced in half in the microwave, you cook it. If the top of the microwave gets hot, that's the lettuce go, you can't kosher the microwave. Because then it absorbs. If it doesn't get hot, you can kosher the microwave, because then it doesn't absorb. And the way, of course, you kosher is you clean that very well, right, with some caustic cleaner. And then you boil a cup of water in there for a few minutes, and then you're fine. So again, you have to run that test first, the potato test, in order to make sure that it doesn't absorb. Okay,
Some of them are doing some done,
but
some
and
do.
then some do, some don't, yeah. I did, fortunately, the microwave, which we had last year, the place you were staying, was staying
Pass the
cold.
potato test.
Yeah, past the potato test.
Another question.
Yeah. I actually, when I was doing the potato test, I burnt the potato, and we had smelled burnt potato in the house for several weeks, several hours.
That's it, it's a very good thing, but,
Yeah.
how else are you gonna feel? The stove top or the range, if you clean it with a cleaner, everybody goes crazy, but silver foil, is that, do you have to, is that a must?
No.
So if it's clean and there's no comments and
Yes.
you know that you cleaned it
It's-
well, you
it's
don't have
best-
to line it.
If you have the best thing to do, obviously, is if you have a self-cleaning oven, is to put the tripods from the top of the stove
Right,
in the self-cleaning
still, you
oven.
have the base
Well,
that
that-
falls all year long,
As long as you don't pick something off
right?
that and put it in your pot, so just make sure it's very clean. Okay.
Wait, so so the stove top with those grates that you put in the oven, the actual stove top itself does not need to be,
Caustic cleaner.
just a caustic cleaner, and that's it. It can be on top of no Pesach?
Because
Really?
when stuff doesn't go, it's not like a countertop.
I know the top goes on top of the grates that were touching already.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, just if anything falls down, then you throw it out.
When was that last? If the food does fall on it.
On the actual surface. which
Then you
is
have to throw it
covered,
out.
then throw out the food, yeah.
Okay.
Don't use it. It's interesting, Shlomo Zalman has a heter here, which I did not know about, that you normally, we don't kosher kalim which are bnei yomim. We wait until that they're not used for 24 hours before we kosher them. But he says if you're up the creek, let's say Erev Pesach, you have to kosher kalim, you forgot, then you used the night before, so then you can put something which is pogane, some caustic substance is pogane the water, like bleach or something in the water, and you can then you can kosher it on even when it's ben yomo. Reason being that if it's not normally if it's ben yomo, we're afraid that the tom is going to go back in to the keli and it's still a good time before 24 hours elapse. But in this case, because you put the caustic the substance in, there's no good time which will get reabsorbed. Okay, there is moving along here. Some people have just doing random at this point. Some people have a minute to if they need lechem mishnah and the matzah is all broken, that they singe the edges of the matzah. Anybody familiar with that here? You have a broken matzah, you take the matzah and you hold over your fire the part of the matzah which is broken, and it gets a burnt edge. And then people consider that to be a shalom, because that's like a crust, right? Never heard that before?
Sounds shitty.
Refinishing your mouth.
Refinishing your matzah, yeah. So he said, it says, let's look about Mashiyesh nogim lachrof matzah shmura. People burn broken matzah and they consider it like a shlema. So Shlomo Zalman said he doesn't know the makor for this. I was told this once by one of my uncles to do this, but people do it. They have to do it very well, so it looks mamish like a sholem. They have to burn it nicely, and you can't do this on Yom Tov because it's not mibasha, it's a sake mono. You're fixing the matzah, right? So you bake, you're not baking the matzah. So if you do this on Chol Moed, but you can't do it on Yom Tov itself. So everybody knows, I think, that Sfardim the entire year do not make a motzi on matzah. only on Pesach, but he said, it brings out, and I did not know this, that there is a minute some starting to have, that the matzah which is left from Pesach, they make a motzia. Ever heard that before?
No, we still consider it to be not your only lechem, that's your option, so we still just make it on.
Right, so then Stay Chemer brings down such a shita. But the, it's interesting, Shlomo Zalman says the reason why Ashkenazim don't
What's
consider,
considered leftover from Pesach when people buy matzah for the entire year?
I guess,
Pesach
like
time.
shmur matzah. I don't know, shmur matzah is better for
All-
Pesach.
I'm saying all matzah.
No, I understand.
Matzah is shmur
I,
matzah.
it says this, because there's some other way, I never heard it before tonight. The reason why we consider something which is matzah not to be bread, and I don't, it's interesting as far, he says that since it doesn't crumble like a cake does, so therefore it's considered to be like bread. I guess bread doesn't crumble, cake crumbles. Never heard that story before. It's
Only
interesting story.
Pesach, big crumbs.
Okay, very important halacha, matzah bread, brother, you should never eat unless you wash first, because it's a subject what the bracha is. Okay, this
general
stuff,
rule?
what?
As a general rule, all year round.
All year round. Well, not for you,
Right, no, I'm saying.
yeah, for Ashkenazim, yeah.
The way of the ladies in cosmetics, when should you be machmir, when not, I mean,
So unless it says on the package, wheat, grain, wheat, you don't have to be making sure. Even that's probably possible mechilas kelet. But it certainly doesn't say grain on it. You don't have to assume that there's grain. You know, if you start looking at lists, then you start looking at lists. So then you have to go by the list.
but if we don't look at this, and rely on the halacha, I mean.
Yeah.
Do most cosmetics are okay?
Most guys are okay. Yeah.
Just in Matanada, we just like, come on, on Pesach. Well, not every year, we change.
Yeah. No, it's just just.
So, yeah, so when,
People didn't know halacha. Yeah, if you don't know halacha, you don't know the imakim anyway.
so when,
Only if you knew the halacha, and nonetheless you would not.
so, the person's like to ask which cosmetics should I get rid of, not get rid of, but sell on Pesach or not. We just have to say, it's basically just,
So the thing is, the problem with wives is
yeah.
that they all think all
What's the
husbands.
problem?
They think, no. The problem with wives, my wife included, is they think all husbands are fried and don't know halacha. Right? So therefore, and they hold that if the cash is left up to men, then not everything will be treif. So therefore, if it's a davar tamul rabbi, if your wife will get very upset if you didn't look at the list. So Al Shalom Bayis, you should certainly look at the list. Okay? Don't go home and say, the rabbi said, I don't have to look at the list. Okay, because then they'll just get angry at me, and I don't want that. So if you want to use the list, use the list.
What about perfumes?
You should have to get the Dominicans get new cosmetics for Pesach.
I'm reading somebody new book every year. So I don't have to-
Just Dominicans get new toothpaste too, which
Then you're really.
What about perfumes and cologne and stuff like that?
again, it's all possible mechilas kelet. Right, so therefore, if you see a grain mamish, so therefore, it's still possible mechilas kelet, but it's good, you're not going to have to use that. It's a big shiloh which they have about these boxes of matzahs, whether you're allowed to open them on Shabbos and Yom Tov. I never really understood the question, but if they have those kind of zipper openings, then it's best not to open on the zipper opening, but just to open the carton. As long as you're not making a reusable keli by opening the carton, you could open a carton on Shabbos and Yom Tov, even though it says on many of these cartons it's best to open before Shabbos and Yom Tov.
What are those herring or dip containers that have?
Yeah, so I think since you can open them without snapping that thing, even though that snapping thing makes it easier to open, so therefore that's not considered to be making a keli.
So you're allowed to open that?
Yeah, you're allowed to open it, right? It's just it makes it more convenient. Okay, the kindness b'chayros. So obviously the minhag is to go to a siyum if you're a b'chor, if you have a child who's a b'chor. So you don't have to eat a kazayas at the siyum, and all you have to do is just be mishtatef and eat even one raisin would be enough. And he says, but the evan, but the rest of it, if you can't make it to a shul, you can be mishtatef by shasat chak. He says you can rely on the telephone.
That was the COVID, that's what we did with COVID.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it for for Pesach,
What is a halacha by Yosef Dolphin, a C-section? They fasten our Pesach?
no. There are sometimes unique reason why the Tainis B'choros takes place in her Pesach. He says, because obviously no reason is given by Chazal. He says because the reason is because when the Bechorim would see the Korban Pesach, they'd have special tsar that they lost the right to do the avodah. So therefore they fasted about the fact that they were chayte with the ego, and therefore lost the right to do the avodah. So that would only by Bechor would be able to do the avodah. And the pash, I don't think it's an interesting question. I hope it comes up.
Why Bechor who's a Cohen still fast?
What?
So why Bechor who's a Cohen still would fast or?
Good question. What is Kor's Korban not fast? For his reason.
You're still not doing,
Yeah.
after the Bechor,
Trying to get out of it
right?
on the Sundays
Yeah, I
before,
don't
so
think he actually addresses that here.
The Bechor part,
real
right?
life problem. Trying to
Big
start
demons.
some of it 6 years.
You're Bechor, right?
No, my son is.
Ah,
That's a good question. I don't think he addresses it here.
so times before. It doesn't apply to your garments, right?
Father has to fast.
Father
his
has
Pesach.
to-
Well, I go to show like your seals,
No.
Yeah, he doesn't bring down down, but we'll see about Kohanim. Obviously, the other reasons are given, which would apply, but
During COVID, all virtual.
that's a good question.
I think you can still participate in the virtual, no?
What?
You don't have to be present at
No, as we said, the Shasta Chaki will go do it through telephone. Okay, the question, any questions? You want to address what you like to address, yeah.
What do you do if during Chol, you want to spend the night in a hotel and you walk in the room and they have the minibar there? Now, when you pay for the hotel room, then you corner that on Pesach, and you have to make sure there's no food there before.
Yeah, I've done beforehand, because we remove that. So if you go to a less expensive hotel, they don't have minibars.
Well, technically,
You have to
also,
do it.
The neighbor, you don't know until you pay
you
for
don't
it.
order it until you pay for it. You don't order it until you take a product out of the
It
fridge.
doesn't matter, you're not Christ. No, if somebody takes it out, you have to pay for it. It's you're not Christ.
That's the cheaper.
And you're responsible for it.
You have to do the deek of that room if you're checking in.
But it's no mitzvah, because it's just a logical thing to do, but you're not mitzvah.
If you go to the hotel before you.
Yeah, go to the hotel the day before, you're there night before Pesach, yeah.
Like, is there a circle? You have to rent?
What?
Oh, you have to
Yeah.
rent?
So if one books a room on Chol Pesach and goes in the night, there's chametz there, then when it's over by Rabbi Matzeh, correct? That's completely good.
Yeah, if there's, but you could tell them ahead of time, take it out.
Yeah.
But you.
I don't want, it looks from that smile, it looks like there's a hidden
No,
agenda.
there isn't.
So I don't wanna get involved in the hidden
Sorry, go to
agenda.
that hotel.
No, but like,
Minibar,
Do you have to tell them? Do you have to,
Hotel eight.
do you have to tell them before you book the room or after?
Bedroom.
Tell them before you get into it.
Or you can tell them after booking
Yes.
before you arrive?
Before you book, you don't have, before you arrive, you don't have a room.
Got it.
It's not yours.
So which hotels do you frequent?
Can you cover maybe
Go to one six.
for like a minute on beer comments? Like, what are the rules for beer comments in regards to like, does the comments need to be burned? People throw lots of bread in there and it's like probably a
You
problem.
have to burn mattresses so you don't go.
It's interesting, when Shlomo Zalman holds us, these are also even a comment that you're burning. So, and everything has to be done with seichel, but I'm not sure I understand your question.
Meaning, people throw in items into the fire that don't necessarily burn. But I guess, probably.
Yes, so that is.
A year's worth of.
Yeah.
Because the shelf is not right.
Usually, since we burn chametz before the Shas Isser, so therefore at that time we would still flush it down the toilet, put it in a dumpster.
I'm saying, are you yotze beer, or does it have to be totally burned?
Burn some,
Right?
to be Mekayim, the sheet of that beer chametz is on this way for, and the rest throw out. Yeah.
So only a shear of it has to be
Right.
fully
A
burned.
lot of people at the minute, it's not clear to me why, I'll be the minute that Erev Pesach after the Chatzos, they don't want to have chametz even in their garbage cans. I mean, I don't think, once you put in the garbage, I think it's not really achilas keli anymore simply because it's most, but, okay, I guess dogs do eat from the garbage, but.
Beer.
What?
The beer, the beer definitely will get to it.
So,
So if we're going to wait for Yom Tov and we're selling the house or everything in the house, do we have to leave by his mom beer or we could stay there till, yeah?
what do you mean?
We're selling
already said you're
all the
selling
contents of the
only-
house.
You're selling only the chametz, you're not
So-
selling the house.
We could let
No, we
see
have to let
chametz-
the, you have to let the non-Jew in when he comes.
No, but are we allowed to see chametz pass non-beer or we can't?
Why not? It's not your comments anymore.
As long as it's by Rabbi Matzah.
Also, people get very tape happy. and
It's like you went to, went to supermarkets, you come to supermarkets. How do you want to-
Question, people have like china cabinets,
Or
they
pots,
cover
they don't want
them,
clean.
or they label them comments, or even your cabinets that hold just pots and stuff, like there's no
I
like
don't
real
want to say,
comments
I'm
in
not
there.
clean.
Do you need to go tape,
I'm not saying
do you
I'm
need to
not
cover
gonna-
your china cabinet that has like kalim
Just
inside?
a little-
You don't need
Just
to, but
for
if
one
you
day.
have kids who like rummaging around, then it's best to do it.
Uh-huh,
Okay, your kids probably don't access your china cabinet,
right,
probably know better than that.
no, I'm saying, the fact that it's see-through,
You don't have to cover that. My wife makes us cover it up,
I always been
but
covering.
it's not necessary, not necessary to cover it. I always grumble and she says, do it anyway. Okay, like I said, they don't trust
It's like
us.
women on the holiday feast.
I wonder if, I wonder if Shlomo Zalman's wife trusts if Shlomo Zalman. Huh?
I just want to know like the.
Sometimes they don't put his wife, that's what it's on, but
Sorry?
at a funeral, you say, don't ask him to
Yeah,
come. Even for Pesach.
yeah. Yes, whatever she told him to do, he did. Okay, if there's anything else, then you're gonna have, please call me, get in touch with me, so, and we'll try and resolve it. Sure.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Shkoyach.
Moshe, is it too late to
Are
make
you
that
selling
order?
comments or you're not?
Is it too late to make that order?
Unless,